This is called to order the August 3rd, 2022 regular meeting of the Ducktown Council. And at this time, I'd like to ask Master Police Officer John Gilreath to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please join me in a moment of silence. Thank you. This time we're going to open up for public comments. If anyone would like to address the council, please come forward to the podium, state your name and address, and limit your comments to 3 minutes. There being no one wishing to address the council, the public comments are closed. Item number 3, the consent agenda. Tonight we have the minutes from the July 6, 2022 regular meeting, correction of the fiscal year 2022-2023 position classification table, and the full year 2022 audit contract. And with that, I'll entertain a motion.
Make a motion that we accept the consent agenda as amended and presented.
Any discussion on the motion on the floor? There being none, all in favor, please say aye. 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 Opposed? The motion passes 4-0. At this time, I'd like to ask Town Manager Drew Havens and Police Chief Jeff Ackerman to join me here at the podium, and Master Police Officer John Gilreath. Several years ago, the Town Council passed a resolution where we recognize employees on 5-year intervals, and in recognition of that, we give them a certificate of achievement and a gift certificate to a favorite restaurant or business of their own in Duck. Tonight, we're very pleased to recognize Master Police Officer John Gilreath on his 5-year anniversary with the town of Duck. John, congratulations.
Thanks.
Come, please. Ready?
Fantastic. Thank you, sir.
Pose for the. Any words? Would you like to address anybody? Say anything?
I just want to say I've worked at other departments on the beach. I love the town of Duck. I love the police department, council. Y'all do pretty good. I appreciate you. My admin, I've never had an admin like this that I've enjoyed coming to work as much as I do. So thank y'all so much, and I'm going to go get something to eat here in a little bit with this.
Congratulations again, John. You read that just the way I wrote it. Going on to item number 5, a public hearing, discussion consideration of ordinance 22-05, an ordinance of the town of Duck, North Carolina, amending several sections of the Ducktown Code to accommodate the addition of residential duplex structures as a permitted use in the C1 Neighborhood Commercial Conventional Zoning District. At this time, I'd like to turn over to our town attorney, Robert Hobbs.
Thank you, Mayor. At this time, we will open the public hearing on proposed ordinance 22-05. During this hearing, the council will sit as a legislative body. At this time, Donna Creef will make a presentation on behalf of the town staff.
Good evening. As the 156.02, which is the C1 zoning district, there are also proposed amendments. I'm sorry, that's 51.02. 156.02 is the definition section. The C1 is 156.033, and then there's also an amendment to 156.040, which is the permitted use table. And this is a text amendment request that has been submitted by Mr. Andrew Meredith, and Mr. Meredith is here as well as his representatives. He owns property at 1448 Duck Road, and he is seeking to add duplexes to the list of permitted uses in the C1 district. The C1 district was amended, all of the zoning districts, all of the commercial zoning districts, including the C1 district. Recently, staff had a visit out to Mr. Meredith's property and discovered that a commercial building that he had been approved for in 2014, that was approved for commercial on the bottom floor and an apartment on the second floor, that he had converted so he can bring that building into consistency with the ordinance if the ordinance amendments are adopted. So we're here for the public hearing tonight. After the public hearing, the board will be in a position to act to adopt these if it's the consensus of the board to do so. Again, it's 3 amendments. As part of the text amendments, the board also has to make a finding of consistency with the land use plan. And there is information in your packet that I went over last month. I'll be glad to go over it again, but there are several policies that are applicable to this, and it is the staff's opinion that the text amendment is consistent with the land use plan and that you are able to make that finding should you do so and want to act on this tonight. And I'll stop right there and entertain any questions that you may have and let you proceed with your public hearing.
Questions?
No questions tonight.
At this time, the applicant will have the opportunity to make a presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Hobbs. Mr. Mayor, members of the board, I'm Bob Hornick, an attorney with the Bro Law Firm in Chapel Hill, and I'm here this evening on behalf of Drew Meredith in support of the text amendment application. I was here with the planning board when Ms. Kreef did a presentation. I watched last month's meeting where Ms. Kreef gave her presentation again. I don't intend to repeat all that she said on those occasions. I will point out to the board that I believe there are 2 other C1 locations in the town of Duck. The one up north is about an acre altogether. I think there's a marina there, perhaps. Mr. Meredith's parcel is about an acre. I think you all know where that is. The proposed text amendment has been drafted in such a way to be pretty tight so that it wouldn't be broadly applicable. Even if it were, there are so few C1 districts that there would not be much of an impact on the town. I think that the fact of the matter is that when Mr. Meredith got his CUP back in 2014 for the commercial below and the apartment above, since then he's had 2 or 3 tenants or potential tenants for that location. I think an ice cream shop and a coffee shop, but the site just isn't suitable. It hasn't worked out for that type of use. So the request is to allow Mr. to make the text amendment so that Mr. Meredith can then pursue an amendment to the existing CUP. You might call it an SUP these days. I don't know with the changes in statute, special use permit rather than a conditional use permit. That would allow him to have a duplex, essentially, a residence downstairs and a residence upstairs. And that is the 3 different amendments that are that are all part of this ordinance are all directed toward making that possible. And that's really what we're asking the board to allow Mr. Meredith to attempt. Mr. Meredith is here, as is Marty Barnett, his engineer, with respect to the property. If you have any questions of me or Mr. Meredith or Mr. Barnett, we're happy to try to answer them. And we'd ask simply that the text amendment be granted so that we can move on with the process. Thank you.
Questions for Mr. Hornick or for the applicant?
This does not include, this is not an intention for new construction, right? This is just to legalize, so to speak, what you're
Right,
there already.
the existing structure that's on the property.
And the 1,200 square foot space on the first floor would all be part of that residential unit.
Right, exactly. You have the 600 feet up top and the 1,200 down below.
Other questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
At this time, would any member of the planning board wish to make a presentation?
Good evening, Mayor and members of the members of the Town Council. The Planning Board did review this matter several months ago. I think the key thing that the Planning Board looked at as a consideration was that it has altering the text amendment, modifying the text amendment, makes it applicable to a very small area in Duct. As Donna mentioned, there are only 2 parcels that it would impact. We think that the overall, its impact on the town would be minimal, and it seemed to be a reasonable approach to accommodate additional usage.
Questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
At this time, if there are any members of the public who wish to address this proposed ordinance, if you'll come forward, make a presentation, and please state your name and address. Seeing none. At this time, unless there are any remaining questions from council, we'll go ahead and, or any other presentations from the applicant, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing. The council may now deliberate on this proposal. 2 readings are required to adopt an ordinance, but the ordinance can be adopted at the first reading if the ordinance is approved by 2/3 vote of all members of the council, counting all members, not just those who are present at the meeting. So in your case, there would need to be at least 4 members voting in favor to approve the ordinance at this reading today. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. Any further deliberation by council? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
I move that we authorize ordinance 22-05, an ordinance of the Town Council amending several sections of the Ducktown Code to accommodate the addition of residential duplex structures as a permitted use in the C1 neighborhood commercial conventional zoning district.
Any further discussion on the motion on the floor?
I'd just like to add that I think it seems like a very reasonable request for all the reasons we've heard from the planning board and from staff, as well as the applicant. And it doesn't affect that many areas, and it's not kind of watering down our commercial area by any means. So I think it seems to make a lot of sense.
Any other comments or discussion?
It's moving down the use scale, so it's less intense. I think it's a good thing if no one wants it for business. I think it's a good thing.
Thank you, Tony. There being none, all in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? The motion passes 5-0. Thank you very much for attending. Thank you, Donna. Item number 6, old business items deferred from previous meetings. We have none at this time. Item number 7, new business. Discussion consideration of authorizing a public hearing on ordinance 22-07, amending subsections 156.030D6, 156.031D6, and 156.032D6 of the Town Code to provide standards specifying how stormwater management requirements are to be calculated and additional sitting criteria. With that, turn over to Sandy Cross, Senior Planner.
Good evening, Mayor Kingston and the members of the council. This was a topic that we brought to you back in February. There were several different ordinance, the residential sections, 156, 030, 031, and 032, allowances for lot coverage to exceed the standard, which is 30%, provided you present a engineered stormwater management plan. That was basically the gist of our allowance. It didn't go into any details. And we've had some instances where engineers have said, well, this lot sits pretty high, and they can use what's called interstitial storage, or voids between the grains of sand in the soil, and therefore they don't need to implement any kind of stormwater management. That's not really the intent of what this allowance was for. It was to basically deal with things where people wanted to do some improvements, but they couldn't do them and meet the lot coverage allowances. So council agreed, I believe it was maybe 2013, it was quite a while ago, to allow for increases provided you met a standard. Without that criteria saying what that standard is, we've run into this situation a couple times, and staff is just simply looking for some more detail as to what that stormwater management plan needs to include. And so we consulted with our town engineer, Mike Robinson, and we also spoke with our building inspector, because some of the things that were tossed around were things that were not necessarily applicable if you look at it from a building code standard. So what we put together was what we felt was a best management practice for our review when it comes to stormwater management. And we are looking to present that for a public hearing next month, if you all would make a motion to approve that. And I'm happy to answer questions.
So it's our job tonight just to say,
Yeah. And if there's something you see in the proposal that you want us to revisit, we can certainly take that back and revisit it. I will note that Planning Board did make a recommendation that we add, because stormwater plans can actually be prepared by either a professional engineer or a surveyor, and we did not have that included in the language, so Planning Board did include that, asked us to add that to the last paragraph in that zoning text amendment.
That was the only change that the planning board
That was the only change the
suggested,
Planning Board
correct?
made.
Any further questions for Sandy?
Yeah, if it seems to address the issues that staff has encountered, and planning board has vetted it.
Yeah, and I'm not sure whether Chairman Cofield has any comments that he'd like to add.
Seems reasonable.
No.
Okay.
No comments at this time.
There being none, I'll entertain a motion to move it to public hearing.
Make a motion to authorize a public hearing on Ordinance 22-07, amending subsections 156.030D6, 156.031D6, and 156.032D6 of the Town Code, and to add standards specifying how stormwater management requirements are to be calculated in additional siting criteria.
Any further discussion on the motion on the floor? There being none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion passes 5-0. Moving on to the next item of new business, discussion consideration of authorizing a public hearing on Ordinance 22-08, amending subsections 156.051D, 156.051E, and 156.051F of the Town Code to clarify the elevation of dune walkover structures and under what circumstances minimum setback exemptions can be granted. Sandy?
So this is another text amendment that we brought to you back in February. It was brought to our attention that we have some code sections that speak directly to dune walkovers, but there's some inconsistencies with another section of our ordinance that allows for exceptions in our setback. So in Chapter 94 of our town code, which is the beach and dune management, our ordinance says that dune walkways need to be elevated at least 18 inches above the dune. And then we also have that same language in Section 156.124, which is the regulatory standard for dune walkovers in our zoning ordinance. when we get to section 156.051, which you all have visited before because we had some amendments recently to that, it allows for exceptions to our setbacks for walkways. So if you want to go around your house, you can have a walkway within your setback, provided it's not more than 4 feet in width and more than 12 inches above grade. That doesn't jive with what we have in our Dune walkway ordinance. So in order to provide some clarification, we have a couple sections where it relates to community access, community ocean accesses and private walkway structures that we would like to add language that says walkover structures Dune walkover structures are subject to this exemption must still comply with the applicable sections of 156, 124, which says it has to be elevated 18 inches but not more than 30 inches. We also have another section, 156.051F, that we want to have amended, which is just private walkway structures that are not connected to a shared access or to an ocean access. And in that case, this applicable, the Dune walkover structures and sound decks are not exempt from this minimum yard requirement because we're trying to encourage shared access ways. So allowing walkway structures, Dune walkway structures in the setback for an individual property owner has a potential impact to it adversely affect an adjacent property. So that was what our proposal was to planning board. During that discussion, there was some discussion by a couple of the members about whether the minimum, whether this 18-inch standard is really applicable, and if it should be applied across the board, or whether we need different standards in different areas. That's a difficult task, but you'll see in the planning board transmittal letter that they would ask that council consider sending that back to them for further review. And so tonight, what I would ask is if we can get council's approval to submit for a public hearing for just the additions to 156.124, I'm sorry, 156.051, and then if you want to send it back to planning board for further review of the 18 inches. And I'm happy to have Chairman Cofield offer any comments he has related to that discussion. And Councilor Whitman was there as well.
I think it'd be good to hear from the planning board. James?
Thank you. For the record, as I should have said earlier, I'm James Cofield, Chairman of the Planning Board. I think Sandy described the issue in front of you, the issue you've been presented with very well. In the Planning Board, there was discussion about the need to accommodate the changes that the staff recommended, which the Planning Board is in favor of. There was discussion, however, about the minimum standards for the height of a dune walkover. And I think the best way to look at it is that the wave structure in the 6-mile oceanfront stretch of Duct and the dunes vary significantly. And if you look at the municipal service district, the district that accommodates the beach nourishment, it is recognition of the fact that the dunes vary significantly in Duct, because the municipal service district only applies to a portion of Duct, not the entirety of Duct. Recognizing all of that, I think it's fair to say that the discussion in the Planning Board was that one shoe does not fit all, and that we ought to recognize the difference in the wave action along the 6-mile stretch of Duct and the difference in the dune structure along the 6-mile stretch of Duct. So with the idea that it could be a varying standards based upon whatever standards we come up with, but requiring the entirety of Duct of having an 18-inch minimum dune walkover height just does not seem to fit what we want in Duct. So to accommodate moving forward, the request to move forward, we approved the items in front of you, but we're recommending that you request that we look at the standards that are being proposed. And so it's separate. And that's the flavor of the discussion in the planning board.
So James, what you're recommending is we send this to public hearing the way it is, but also ask the planning board to take a deeper look?
Yes, please.
And that would be added to a different section of the code. We would be looking at Chapter 94, the beach management, as well as 156, 124, which is the regulatory standard section.
That's correct, because it's there that the standards are set.
And just to clarify that second analysis that the planning board would do, it would be to discuss what makes sense for different contours of dunes, as well as just maybe setting a variety of standards for the dune walkovers?
Yes, and the variety only because the dune structures vary significantly in Duct. I mean, the dune structures, let's say in the southern or below the Army Corps of Engineers property, is different from the municipal service district, which we all are witnessing the beach nourishment project. Well, the beach nourishment project is not south of the pier because south of the pier doesn't need it. And so that's recognition of the fact that the dunes vary significantly in Duct. So we want to come up with something that fits the dunes in the particular varying districts in Duct. But just the easiest way I can say it is one standard does not fit all for something like this.
Is there a danger moving ahead with what you've proposed tonight with respect to the ordinance versus going back and restudying it?
That's a worthy question. The staff was of the opinion that it does not. It does beg, though, the question, the issue that we do it immediately, that we not postpone it, because there could well be some people who would come before the town and request approval of some dune walkovers structures that would be caught in this little period. I think that's a worthy question. It begs if you are the opinion that we should do it immediately. It should not wait for later consideration.
So, yeah, that's the question. So if we're going to put a public hearing on this, can you guys get your stuff done before the next public hearing? No. Okay.
If the question is whether this ordinance revision will impact people's ability or need to do new dune walkovers, it's not. But any changes we make to 156, 124 in the future will then apply in this situation. Understand that this zoning text amendment only applies to community access ways and joint access, shared access between owners, and only if they're building new. If they're just modifying or extending a walkway a few feet, you're not talking about a complete rebuild. We're talking about these regulatory standards typically apply with new construction. They're not going to apply in every instance.
For new construction, yes.
That's 156, 124 would, not 156, 051, which is what we're looking at changing or adding clarification to because of that conflict between the 12 inches in 156, 051 and the 18 inches in Chapter 94 and 156, 124.
And so the 18
12.
That's, I think, what Chairman Cofield is suggesting, that we do not standardize, that we.
For the entirety.
Okay, so I'm just a little.
No, 30.
No, sir, not tonight. Tonight,
No, I understand.
public hearing would be for just simply clarifying when we have community access ways and shared access ways in the setbacks that are oceanfront, that we would have a consistency with our chapter 4 agreement and beach management. I feel like I lost. And chapter 156, 124, which is the regulatory standard on the primary and frontal dunes. So we're just trying to get consistency with how we treat those shared access ways and community access ways when we're talking about oceanfront.
And right now, you've got some at 18 and some at 12.
Well, no, we've got questions about that inconsistency. If you're going to allow a shared access way in the setbacks, but your ordinance says it can only be no more than 4 feet wide and no more than 12 inches above grade, but in your dune management section and your regulatory zoning section regarding dune walkways, it says it must be 18 inches, then you can't meet that can't meet that exemption. You can't apply for that exemption criteria.
Right, because they don't fit. They don't connect. They don't match. That was my understanding. It's just a clerical kind of a consistently clarifying everything that's to do with those kind of
Right.
walkways. They're all consistent right now. That's what the first step is.
So again, tonight, we are simply looking to advertise for a public hearing to add the language to the setback exceptions as they relate to dune walkovers, which would then say, if you're sharing a dune walkover, you can have it in the setback, but it has to be 18 inches above grade, but no more than 30. And what Chairman Cofield wants to see is us bring back that regulatory standard 156, 124, and Chapter 94 that says, is 18 inches above grade and no more than 30 really what should be applied across the entire beach in Duck? Understanding the nourishment is a separate area because of the nourishment, because it's an engineered beach. They are not allowed to have walkways at all because we don't want them impacting the engineered beach.
So staff and planning board recommendation is to send this ordinance to public hearing and then ask the planning board and staff to do a rework on the other section.
Yes.
If I could just give two additional comments. I think Sandra, again, has explained it well. There's a bit of ambiguity in the code, and that's what that's what the staff is trying primarily to accommodate and get the ambiguity out. In reviewing this process, the planning board looked at the fact, well, does that mean that minimum 18 inches applies? And that's where the discussion occurred in the planning board analysis of the proposal in front of us. And I think it's fair to say that that discussion was, we ought to look at that because of the differences along the beachfront in Duck. The second thing I think the planning board wants to accommodate is to have some more public resident input into this decision, because there has been some discussion among some residents who own beachfront property up and down the oceanfront properties, and some who own property in areas where they're not affected, or the dunes are very different than in, say, the municipal service district, you just don't see an 18-inch minimum standard as something that's needed. So it accommodates both things. One, getting the ambiguity out of the code, if I'm saying that correctly, Sandy.
For 156.051, yes.
And secondly, that we're asking that you ask us to take a look at the standard, and that would accomplish both objectives.
I'd like to make a motion that we authorize a public hearing on Ordinance 22-08, amending subsections 156.051D, E, and F of the Town Code to clarify the elevation of dune walkover structures. Further authorizing the planning board to examine the standards at future meetings.
Standards related to the elevation of dune walkover structures as noted in Chapter 94 and 156-124.
Specific to the chapters and sections that were just delineated by staff.
Robert, is that adequate?
Yes, Mayor.
Any further discussion on the motion on the floor? No. There being none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? The motion passes 5-0. Thank you, Sandy. Thank you, James.
Thank you.
Moving on to the next item, discussion consideration of authorizing the town manager to execute a contract for dune beach planting. Sandy?
Okay, so our contract, right now we contract with Emerald Forest for beach planting, which consists of American beach grass in the off-season, sea oats and bitter panic grass in the spring. As you all know, we also have a volunteer program. The contract we have with Emerald Forest is for the entire beach. That contract has a clause in it that reduces the amount by whatever we end up planting from a volunteer base. Our contract with them expired on June 30th. They did just recently finish up their part of the contract with their sea oats and bitter panic planting about 2 weeks ago. As a result of the expiration, I did put out a new RFP to 7 different landscapers. Of those 7, I only received 2 submissions. 2 of them declined just because it's a large project. It's labor intensive, and a lot of folks, as we all know, don't have that labor right now. I will say, much to my dismay, Emerald Forest was not the least expensive. We have been working with them since about, I want to say 2013, and they have done an amazing job. They also have proven themselves to be extremely reliable and capable of accomplishing the task at hand, which is substantial when you're talking about planting, I believe it's 21,000 linear feet or 17,000 and 10,000, 27,000 linear feet of beach. We also got a bid from Caribbean Landscaper. They are slightly less in terms of proposed cost. However, they were not able to provide me with any references that gave me comfort that they were able to handle this size of a project. So I am recommending that we go with Emerald Forest. I know there's a little bit more monetary impact, but it still falls below the budgeted number that we had presented. And in addition to that, Emerald Forest has also, I've reached out to them about our rain garden, and they're gonna be servicing that as well. These are their specialties: beach grass and wetland species. So, with council's approval, we would ask that you authorize us to sign a contract with them. And I'm open for questions.
Questions for Sandy?
So the concern with Caribbean is that they just don't have references to say that they have done this kind of.
I'm sorry. I
I'm
can't
sorry.
hear you, Rob.
So with Caribbean, they just don't have enough references to demonstrate their ability to complete the contract? Because that would be in addition to the stuff that we already have them doing, is that correct?
Absolutely.
But Emerald Forest is not doing that stuff, the additional
No,
stuff.
they are not. They also do sand, they will be doing some sand fencing. They will probably be I believe they received the contract from Weeks Marine to do the sand fencing for Duck, Southern Shores, and Kitty Hawk. But that'll be a one-time thing. That's not something that's on their agenda every year. Their agenda here in Duck is beach grass and sea oats and bitter panic grass.
They're the ones that have the contract for the sidewalks in the village?
Caribbean is the one that has the
what I meant.
contract for the sidewalks.
It appears that they've had a little problem keeping their manpower just to get the sidewalks done also.
Certainly.
Any other comments or questions for Sandy?
I take a lot of weight in what I'm hearing from Sandy regarding her experience with working with Emerald Forest. It's a lot to roll the dice on. Not that Caribbean has, I mean, I think overall, Sandy, you might, our Sandy on council might know that that Caribbean has maybe had a little issue, but overall, I mean, I've been pleased with I'm seeing them out there a lot, and, you know, it looks good, but this is a whole different specialty, in my opinion, and I would be in favor of sticking with Emerald Forest just based on the recommendation from staff and the fact that the difference isn't that great and it's within budget.
I'll entertain a motion if there's no other comments.
I'd like to make a motion that we accept the beach contract for Dune and beach planning from Emerald Forest,
I think you're authorizing the town manager.
town manager, to do it.
Any further discussion on the motion on the floor? There being none, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? The motion passes 5-0. Moving on to the last item of new business, update on annual hazard mitigation plan implementation. Sandy?
Okay, so you all know that we are a participating community in the National Flood Insurance Program and the Community Rating System. 2020, we did a bunch of things. We updated our hazard mitigation plan. We did our community assistance visit, where we submit all kinds of data to FEMA, showing what we're doing to help mitigate flood losses in the town of Duck. Annually, we also send them information. Last year, I think because we were on the tail end of actual finishing up the rating part of our 2020 assistance visit, we didn't actually have much of a certification request other than sending them elevation certificates. This year, we need to send them a bunch of stuff. So one of those items is an update to our hazard mitigation plan. So what I presented to you today in this package was a revision to the mitigation action plans that were submitted and part of our 2020 hazard mitigation plan. There weren't a substantial amount of changes, but there's changes, like things change, you know, projects change, projects get delayed. And that's basically what we've done. We've summarized on attachment A what those changes and revisions were, and then I put in the spreadsheet, which is part of what came out of the hazard mitigation plan, a red markup strike through so that you can see what changes were made, and then I gave you a clean copy under item C. If council approves this, we would put this on our website. We'll send it out in our e-news so that people can see the changes to our mitigation action plans. You know, a couple things I'll mention, you know, when we finished our community assistant visit in 2020, there were things that we could have done, or had we done sooner, we could have certainly maybe made it to a 5, which would have given like a 25% insurance discount. Now, that's not quite as important now because they're not using we don't have nearly the same SFH, special flood hazard area, but it's still important. So if we had implemented, for instance, a program for public information, which is basically a group that's designated, I believe maybe by council, of an insurance agent and a lender and town staff, you meet together, you come up with strategies, that kind of stuff multiplies your numbers when you're talking about your CRS rating. So that's one of the things that I submitted as a potential change, along with a flood insurance assessment, substantial damage management plan. They're all things that take time, much like the flood response plan that we still haven't finished, or the crisis track SOG. Just, with staffing, it's time intensive. There's some stuff that's new, that's revised. Like, we found beach vitex on the beach. That's a big deal. That's something that, we need to deal with from a hazard mitigation standpoint. We've also identified another invasive species on the beach that we need to look at. So these are all just things that we, implemented into the updated hazard mitigation plan. And, if council has specific questions about specific items, I'm happy to answer them. If you don't, then I would ask that you make a motion to approve attachment C, which is the clean copy of the updated hazard mitigation plan. And with that, I will entertain questions.
Questions for Sandy?
I just have a couple of comments and questions. One, I think this is an excellent plan. It's a massive plan, really.
Well, and I will mention also that this is a big part of when we apply for grants. They're, like the brick grant, they said we were kind of light in our descriptions in our hazard mitigation plan. So the more detail we end up putting, the better it helps us to obtain grants. And you'll see that same in the RCCP stuff.
Yeah, I think it's impressive. In terms of the things you said, and also our reaction to things and preparation for it. So, first question is, how do we manage that this keeps moving in the right direction? It's big. So, like, if I wake up screaming in the middle of the night, who do I call? And say, how's our plan going?
So this is supposed to be done annually, so you can anticipate you'll see it, much like our emergency operations plan. This is something that's going to be reviewed annually among staff, and we'll implement things that have changed, that we collectively bring together. And then every 5 years, there is a much larger implementation and revision to this plan. So in 2015, we had a plan update. In 2020, we had a plan update. And actually, 2015 was a much larger, it was a 10-community regional plan that was difficult because you had places like Camden and more inland places that don't have the same kind of scenarios and situations that we have here on the coast. Now we have an Outer Banks flood hazard mitigation plan, which consists of Dare County, Currituck County, and all the municipalities within Dare County. So it's much more cohesive and easier to go through the process and update. But ultimately, it happens here. It happens in our community.
Okay.
It happens with staff. It happens when we bring stuff to council.
Good, thank you. And the second question I have was, and I think it's DCK 25, we talk about monitoring the erosion with drones and pictures and so on and so forth. Is that active all the time, or do we have like set times we check that?
So that was developed. There was a rapid assessment erosion RPD. It was a couple years ago. I actually put it in place.
That's okay.
Went through a lot of effort to get agreements from owners to put these ground control points out. As far as when it happens, ideally it happens annually. However, again, it's time intensive. You just don't go out there and say, hey, here you go, drone, go up and fly.
Yeah.
You got to have somebody watching it. And ideally, you have to have two people because one person is actually like watching the screen and the other is watching for helicopters because there's a lot of helicopters in the ideal time frame when you would fly the drone, which is between 10 and 2. Because anything earlier, you get glare. Anything later, you get shadows. So, the ideal time is the midday. Ideally, we want to be running them at the same time that they're doing our profile surveys so that they can compare and make sure that there's consistency.
That's good, and my comment was, I would be interested in seeing, your trending results on that when you think it's appropriate and you have enough. I think that would be a
I
good
actually have,
presentation
like,
for us to have.
four sets of those plans. We are going to run them again. We're actually going to just pay Benny Baldwin to do that because
It's easier.
it's a guarantee it's going to get done.
Right.
Versus saying, Sandy, you got to make this happen this
Yeah.
week. And it may not work when I have stuff that's got to be out the door. So that's going to happen when they start doing the surveys for the beach nourishment. We'll do not only the beach nourishment, but the entire beach.
Cool.
And we have done that 4 times. So I've got some trends.
So maybe after the 5th one, should we look at it then? Or should we do it
Well,
before?
the engineers are always looking at it because we collect the data.
I meant us, just
Us.
to see how it,
Sure, we have summary reports. We can send you all of them.
Good.
And you can compare them.
Right.
Sandy, could I ask, when you submit these changes and updates, if you will, to our local Town of Duck plan, and then we would look to 2025 to do a more regional one with the coastal counties that you described that we did in 2020. So do we have to, are we keeping track of our changes and then they just easily meld in? Or are you looking for that to be a cumbersome project in 2025?
No, I would hope not. I would hope that, this one will be our 2022 update, and I have that in a, hazard mitigation folder that says 2022 update. And then next year, we'll have a 2023 update. And by the time we get to 2025, we'll be like, here you go.
Right.
And,
Do we
these are
have
the new
to,
ones.
do we have to share it with everybody else? Or
Oh.
are we telling them when we update so it all stays cohesive, or is it important to
So-
have that?
It all ends up in one plan, but are we sharing it with Kildable Hills and Nags Head and saying, hey, look at our plan? No. If I want to look at their plan, I have access to their plan because it's in the regional plan. We'll put this on our website. We'll update it next year, and then by the time we get into 2025, it will be a group of us coming together again, and we'll have community members as well. Like we had Jim Braithwaite and Matt Price on the board, on the committee that sat for the 2020 Hazard Mitigation Plan update. It's a very detailed process in order for us to get those CRS points. In 2015, we got 50 points. In 2020, we got 350. So that makes a difference between us getting a 15% discount and a 20% discount. I know I'm digressing, but it's all in my brain.
Right, and then you might even bring in the insurance agents and stuff like
Right,
to
right.
even get our points up higher.
So, I don't want it to be cumbersome. That's why having this done on an annual basis
Great. That's what I was kind of.
is ideal. And, like I said, last year, there was that transition between the 2020 community assistance visit, which is a long process. 2021 didn't actually happen. So 2022, you can expect it again next August as well. Maybe July. We'll see if I can get it ahead of time.
Okay, thank you.
Sandy, is this part of the Elmore Commission plan that was just released yesterday or today for review?
No.
This is not part of that.
No, this is part of the Outer Banks Regional Hazard Mitigation Plan. And this is just simply an update of the Town of Duck's mitigation action plans.
Because they referenced the town of Duck in there, that's why I was wondering. Any other questions for Sandy?
No. So do we need a motion for
Yes,
this?
we do.
I'd like to make a motion that we incorporate the updates of the annual hazard mitigation plan implementation as presented.
Any further discussion on the motion on the floor? There being none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you very much.
Sandy. Item number 8, items referred to and presentations from the town attorney.
Mayor, I have no report this evening.
Thank you, sir. Item number 9, items referred to and presentations from the town manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to call on Chief Black, and then we'll let Ms. Cross come back after Chief Black, and then Chief Ackerman, and then Ms. Leichner. And then Jessica Barnes will wrap it up.
hopefully the clicker will work. Good evening, everyone. I'm the intermission of Sandy, and then you'll get Sandy back. We're here tonight to talk about our July numbers, so I'll get right into them with calls for service. A pretty good picture of Matt Munden there. I'd like to try to highlight some of our folks. He's doing a great job for us as engineer. He was on that quarterdeck fire first, and I snapped a good picture the other day, so I thought I'd give him a shout out. We'll look at July numbers. We're very close to last year at 100. That's pretty decent. If you were to take July and multiply it by 12, we would be a department of 1,200 calls. We operate a lot like a department of 1,200 calls, even though at the end of the year our numbers aren't quite that high, but we're definitely in the thick of it right now. To date, we're a little higher than last year at 336 calls to date. You can see how it's tracked over the last couple of years. I think this is probably our new norm. I don't think this is anything we're going to see go away at this point, but that's what's so fun about tracking it over time. When you see the breakdown, again, pretty close. We're down a couple calls with Rescue 11, and then we'll be up with something else. Station alarms, might be for more manpower. That might fall in there, or might be something that's just not covered in one of these specific things. Most importantly, I love my pie chart to at least give you an idea. What you tend to see this time of year is a little of everything, right? We're not doing any one thing over the course of the month. So in 100 calls, we had to go to all kinds of stuff. That's pretty normal. Training hours, you'll see in July our training is probably at the lowest. That's because we're running calls, it's hot, people are traveling. So person-to-person hours come down a little bit, but still 158 hours, 109 were career, and 49 hours of volunteer, and that's with a lot of volunteers traveling this month. A couple weeks ago, thank you to Betsy especially for doing Happy Birthday Duck Fire with the town event. A couple of council folks were there, but a few pictures there. We had our little firehouse where the kids could flow water. We were doing tours of our Truck 11, and again, we gave out the Happy Birthday popcorn, so I thought I'd throw a few things up here. Unfortunately, last week we did have to respond to Kerala. So July 29th at 4:37, we were called up to help Kerala. So it was Southern Shores and Kitty Hawk. I just threw in a couple pictures here. No one was hurt. There's no civilian injuries, no firefighter injuries. Again, it was a night fire going into dawn, which definitely helped us with the heat because it was absolutely warm that night. To the left, I just threw a couple pictures in, is actually Deputy Chief 12 up in their ladder flowing on the structure, and that's our folks. There's actually 3 people in that picture. We were on the back side of the house on a 2.5 for a while, so I think it's Christian down on the ground who just got comfortable. We were flowing for a while. He was just getting himself in a position to flow and not fatigue too much, but again, we did go up to help them. They also come down and help us. I want to take a couple minutes tonight and reference one of our CIPs. You see this every year with hoses and nozzles. My philosophy and Deputy Chief's philosophy is, we want buy-in from the folks that are actually doing it. I'm not pulling a hand line every day anymore. I'm probably at a radio sitting by the Tahoe. So for the project with the hoses, we try to replace every year, but we're at the point now where we not only had to replace, but probably look at a new product, a new type of hose. So we tasked the firefighters to decide what hose. Obviously, there's a budget, but we said, go out, you tell us what you want. All I ask is that you have consensus. So the three shifts with their crews and the volunteers took several months to choose what we were going to ultimately end up with to use as a new hose. The hose is on the left. That's a picture of Cameron pulling it, showing his athleticism and his youth in that picture there. But that is a picture of our new hose. Whenever you change hoses, you have to start looking at nozzles. And this is where I give a lot of credit to the firefighters. Ultimately, they're pulling it, but sometimes when you change hoses, you have to look at changing nozzles. And the reason I throw this picture in, these are the nozzles we've had for probably 15 years. We didn't have to buy new nozzles. What we were able to do, if you look at the picture, that's a break apart. So we can either have a smooth bore or a fog. It says 7/8 there. We were able to just change one part on the nozzle to fit with this hose to make it a $100 change on a nozzle versus a new nozzle at $900. So they were very, very good stewards of our budget. They came back with consensus on what to order, and this is what we ended up on. So I just want you to know, when you approve a budget for an item, we're not like, okay, let's just make the call. Let's really look at what works for Duck and get some input from those that are doing it. So they did a really good job with this project. I was very happy with the nozzle change there. So I just thought I'd share that because The hose is now in. We still have to get some more with budgets going forward, but we're there. Little fun fact, we have between 13,000 and 14,000 feet of hoses, and that's everything from a hand line to the 5-inch supply line. Just a little fact for you.
Deteriorate even if you don't use it?
Say again?
Does a hose deteriorate?
You can get dry rot and things like that. The hose we have now is probably like 10 to 15 years old, and we replace, right now we're looking at just hand lines, an 1 3/4. We've already done a replacement over several years of 5-inch. We used to have a different type of 5-inch, so it helps to use it. It doesn't help not to use it.
Right, that's what I figured, yeah.
And, they're constantly making changes. What I'll tell you with this hose, different from our previous hose, there's less nozzle, what we call nozzle reaction. The pump pressures are less for this hose, which is less wear and tear on the engine. So there's a lot of good things with this change. It won't be with this for a while.
Thank you.
So. And then lastly, keep it short tonight, it is July. Councilman Ciano, you had talked about the stair chair piece, so I wanted to at least throw in a couple items here on the stair chair. So this is what one looks like. We call it the stair chair. It's used to move patients that are not ambulatory. So it's not just for someone that might have hurt their foot or something. If we have a cardiac up on the 2nd or 3rd floor, we're not going to let them walk down. EMS has these. They're used for patient assist. That's what, we'll do that too. If someone is, what we'll say, someone may repetitively need us, they're weak, they're sick, and they're constantly going to the doctors. I'll come back to that. That's where I think we can be helpful. And that could be helpful locally. So EMS carries these. We do not have one specifically for us. A new price there, to buy one is $3,600. So if you ask me, do you think Duck Fire should have one? It would be helpful on those occasions, as long as everyone remembers a patient assist and a call for that is an EMS call first. Where I think it would be advantageous if we chose to go that route is either locals or people that are here a lot that have an issue and we know what we're getting into. We can probably ease EMS on those calls, decrease time, we keep it at the station and use it as needed. So I bring that back to you. Again, I'm not asking you to get one, but I know that was information you wanted, so I wanted to bring it forward. It could be helpful. So if you have any questions about that, we can talk about in the next budget year, however you see that. Would it help us now? We're at a staffing level that we can use it without EMS. Understand that some of those are still EMS calls. So.
Could I follow up on that?
Sure.
Thank you for that. If you had the case where it was somebody routinely using it that was sort of a resident or here a lot and you knew what you were getting into, how would that work procedurally with EMS? Would you have them call a separate number, or would they still go through 911 or however that works now, and then you and the fire department and EMS would then discuss it and say, oh, well, we know that situation, we can take it? Or how does that work in real time?
Great question. Just like with Chief Ackerman, any call for service, we want to go through Dare Central. They can do it through a non-emergency number. So if we know at 111 Scarborough Lane that Mr. Jones is there and he needs help regularly, his doctor's appointments, it's still going to be paged the same way. If we know it's Mr. Jones and we know what we're getting into, we can then tell EMS, you can stand down, we've got this.
Okay.
In the case of someone we know. We get there and it's something different, we can call EMS back. If it's a new person, patient assist, and we don't know what we're getting into, we may let EMS keep coming until we can get there and determine that.
Got it.
So.
Okay, so it is something that functionally could work fairly well without getting mixed up in the flow of the work. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. So I throw that out to you in this presentation, and again, if you want to talk more about it, I'm available to do that. And with that, I'll take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Back. All right, so July, we do a little different report for you because there's no comparison in terms of number, July to September. We just do July for you. You can see from this first slide that July is by far the slowest month. And actually, this has been the slowest month since 2014 and 2015. So while I'll say that's not a good thing, it's a great thing for us in the Community Development Department because we can really use a little bit of a break. This is just another comparison when you're looking at the different types of permits with between building permits, permits in the flood zone, and land disturbance permits and trade permits. You can see they kind of all flow pretty closely, except for trade permits. They're usually our most predominant permit. We have a lot of HVAC and electrical changeouts, but that's going to be the brown one up top. And then this is a comparison in July for over the last 9 years. You can see 2018, 2019 were pretty big, and then 2020, 2021 we're starting to get back into a normal routine. And then this is a map of what we've done in July this month, and you can see a few clusters. That looks like up in Soundsea Village area, and that's about probably the only real cluster I see. And the south side of Pier pretty much spread out all over the place. Again, you see a lot of the purples because that's mechanical, and that's our most predominant permit. Did want to throw up just a few building permits by type. We only had one new house, and you'll see that again in the, wait, I think this is the wrong presentation. But we'll keep going. It's okay. We thought we fixed this from last month, but apparently not. So you're going to see the one new house that we've got. And then I wanted to just point out we had two substantial improvements. Neither were in a flood zone, which makes it easier for me. But we got a pretty substantial renovation at 114 Sea Colony and 140 Bayberry. And then a couple pools along with a renovation at 124 Marland. I'm sorry. There's two pools. One is associated with the new house. So really, we only had one pool. Kind of. All right. Can I have the other presentation now? Sorry, that was not intended. I was expecting it was going to be all one. I know. We did it last minute. I'm going to blame it on Jim. Yeah, that one right there. It wasn't. So Jim loves figs, and right now they are ripe. So thus you have figs. Unless you go up the Balm Trail, they're all over the place. They have a lot of fig trees. So I'm not going to repeat this. This is, we kind of implemented into our pretty presentation. So let's skip. This is the new house over on Osprey Ridge Road. They actually, you could probably see it going up behind your house. You should be able to see it. So duct trail improvements. You all know in the budget, we got approval to do the next phase, which will be from Blue Heron to Waxwing. We actually got the survey work started before the fiscal year ended, but they came back to us with the invoice after, which is perfect. That survey is complete. The design work is going to be worked on, but Joe Anloff did go in for a tonsillectomy today, so I expect it may be a few days before I actually see something from him. But that still puts us, we'll still be on target for a late summer bid with work to begin this fall. We did run into a couple things on this survey that I'm going to need to work out with SPOA, which is Sandling Property Owners Association, and I'll be meeting with them tomorrow, and hopefully all will go well on that end. So stay tuned. We also got word from Division of Coastal Management that we received the Phase 3 grant for the NC Resilient Coastal Communities Program, which is the RCCP. You'll recall that we've just finished up Phase 2. I don't believe we've actually brought Phase 2 deliverables to you yet, but I think that we're going to be revisiting those Phase 2 final deliverables, so they may change. But we're still on target for Phase 3. We've had a virtual meeting with DCM on that process. Unlike Phase 2, where DCM actually assigned us a contractor, Phase 3, we will get to choose that contractor. And I expect I will be talking to Joe Hurd about that tomorrow when he comes into the office. Then lastly, what the heck was it we just did? The hazard mitigation update. Part of that is part of our annual recertification. I just wanted to mention that, that was due on August 1st. Probably, I think it was 268 pages went out to FEMA with that recertification, and that is done, thankfully, for a good part of the next year. Beach Nourishment, we had a bi-weekly meeting today. I'm going to just skip around a little bit here. We were previously expecting construction to begin mid-October and be done. Now construction is looking like it's going to begin beginning of November and end near the end of November, which is disappointing. But the project should only last 25 to 30 days, barring any unusual weather events. So keep your fingers crossed for a smooth fall. We are working, we did get the permit revised, authorizing mobilization from Southern Shores. That was not originally in the major CAMA permit, so that took some working with the engineers and the agencies to revise the CAMA major permit. And we don't have on here easements, but we are working on two easement locations for access, not for mobilization and demobilization, but simply for the workers to get out on the beach and the foremans to get out on the beach. So that's, hopefully I'll have some more updates for you by the next meeting and have those finalized. One of those will be at Barrier Island, and that will include potentially, actually it will, if all goes as planned, a permanent access for us and for surf rescue to get out on the beach at Barrier Island Station. So that's a plus for us in a lot of ways. Then last but not least, this is the Coastal Resiliency Project update, which is the brick project. Easements, we are still working on easements. We've had some conversation with Sunset. We're working on some permanent easements. We're working on some staging easements. We're working on an easement with Barrier Island for the storm tech chambers. So all that stuff is still in the works. We have a few outstanding temporary easements. I think maybe one that I'm still waiting on. So that's going along smoothly. Permit status, however, is not going on along quite as smoothly. We're still trying to get our CAMA permit. And VHB, as of yesterday evening, told me that they also have their encroachment agreement into NCDOT. DOT has asked for some revisions that they're working on. Drew and I met last week with Department of Emergency Management. They actually funded an additional $550,000 towards this project due to the increase in costs. We met with that representative and walked him through the project, which leads us to the last part of it, which is FEMA funding, which we are still waiting on, primarily because the environmental assessment paperwork has still in FEMA land and then has to go through congressional loopholes. And so we're not sure when the money's coming to us, but that leads us to the next thing, which I'm going to let Drew be the, no, I'll start it. It doesn't look like it's going to happen this year, and Drew can fill in the rest.
What she said. So between the hang-ups in permitting, and then the big hang-up is FEMA still has not committed to funding. We have funding from FEMA, so we've been assigned this grant, but they will not sign off on it and authorize it until the environmental assessment is complete. We've rushed them the answers that they needed for that. FEMA is as short-staffed as everybody else, so it's taking a lot of time to get through their process. It's unlikely that, according to our state rep, that we're going to even hear anything from FEMA before the end of September. So it's interesting, Sandy mentioned we were walking with a gentleman from Emergency Management North Carolina and talking about the BRIC grant. And when I told him that we had, indication from FEMA that we were going to be ready for award, in March of last year. He thought I meant March of this year. So it's been that long that award has been imminent on this grant. And it's frustrating to try to get movement. I reached out to a contact in Senator Tillis's office, and phone calls are being made. Again, it doesn't look like we're going to hit the window that we need to hit, which is we need to be starting construction right after Jazz Fest in order to be done and off the roads by the time the next busy season starts in April, May. So it really looks like now we're going to be shooting for next year at this time.
But rest assured, we will have all the permits, all the easements, everything ready so that we can hit the ground running on October 12th or 13th.
And we're still moving as if we have a chance. So if we're pushing on getting the permits, we're pushing on getting everything done, it's in the easements that Sandy's been working on. It's still just waiting on go from FEMA, and we can't contract the project and start doing it before they award, because then they can say, well, you already have the money, you don't need ours.
Is there any way that we may lose some of our grant money on the smaller grants?
So we'll have to go back to, assuming that we need to push this to 2023, we'll have to go back to National Fish and Wildlife. They've extended that once. We'll need to go back to the Tourism Board and ask them if they would extend again. Both of those granting agencies have been very kind, and just realizing that this isn't a delay, that we're not sitting around waiting, nor people aren't sitting around waiting for us. We're waiting for people. We talked to the gentleman from DEM. This is that $550,000. This is a new grant program. So we're going to be asking them to do something that hasn't been done before, which is extend a year. It is a 3-year. It's a 3-year pot of money. So it's highly likely that we will get that. I mean, I can't say 100% for sure, and he couldn't either. But he said, just let us know as soon as you can, and we can modify the grant agreement that we have.
So do you think there's risk to the project other than the timetable?
No.
Okay.
No.
I mean, that's not the worst thing. It is, but it isn't,
Right, and that's the only kind of the bright spot of this, is that it's still a good project that everybody that's involved in it wants to see built. It's just trying to get through all the bureaucracy that we need to work through for this money.
Drew, is there any more that we can do as a town or a council to, I guess, a couple of things, document what we're going through, and also, just solicit help from folks in the federal level?
You can certainly reach out if you've got contacts. So as I mentioned, I reached out to our contact in Senator Tillis's office.
So by doing that, you basically did for the town. It doesn't matter how many of us do it, or would it be beneficial for us all individually to do something?
I don't know that it would have a positive or negative effect. It is in this step of the review of the environmental assessment document.
It's a slow process.
It is a churn. I mean, and we see this in some of the interactions we've had with state regulating agencies as well. Everyone is short-staffed, so what used to take X number of days is now taking 2X to get done, just because of staffing.
So it's staffing in particular, and not just volume of projects? I mean,
I suspect that it's a little bit of both, but what we hear is that everybody's shorthanded.
Is that my last slide, Christian? Okay. I got to get on Jim about putting a question slide on the end. Any questions?
Thank you, Sandy.
Thanks, Sandy.
All right. Looks like Chief Ackerman's up next.
Hello, can you hear me? Hang on. Okay. Good evening, all. Just a little bit about our July statistics, and I promise to be brief tonight. Enforcement actions continue to be up on par. Motor vehicle crashes, of course, are continuing to escalate, and we'll probably see that right through August, unfortunately. I guess the positive side of that is most of the accidents we're investigating are minor in nature with property damage. We've been fortunate not to have any serious injury as a result. Still putting a focus on business checks as we do always. And then extra patrols, oddly, nobody's going on vacation. So nobody's asking us to look after their houses. And then we had one arrest this month. Call volume does continue to be high. We're right at 9,029 calls for the year so far, so chugging along. As you can see, year to date, this is the largest number of calls we've had in July in 5 years. So I think that's on par with what everybody's seeing out there on the road. There is a lot of people here. And then in 2019, we actually had a little busier July, just anomaly there. But overall, we're in good shape. It's school time again. That's coming, believe it or not. I've got some good news to report on that front. Continued since the last meeting I attended, briefed you on some of the school bus issues we were dealing with on Settlers Lane. Had some really positive conversations with Dare County Schools. It seems like they are going to approve my request to route the school buses onto Settlers Lane and eliminate the bus stop on Duck Road. Cool. Tomorrow, they're supposed to be sending a bus up to Duck to do a dry run, make sure there's no issues turning around and getting through the neighborhood there, which they don't anticipate, but they wanted to test it beforehand. So my plan is, and my hope is, to have everything in place, locked in before the school year starts. Having good communications with the parents, and hopefully we're all going to go on a bus ride tomorrow. So I think this is going to have a positive outcome and be safer for all the kids, which is what we wanted to accomplish. Start of the new fiscal year starts working on projects. So the new radar signs equipment came in last week, so we're in the process of applying for encroachment permits from DOT, which hopefully will be filed tomorrow. So we hope that's a fairly quick turnaround, and then we can get these signs up. So the two locations we're looking at, and we've done a lot of work down there trying to figure out exactly how we could get the most bang for our buck, if you will. So one of the major issues we've had there is vehicles trying to turn out from Oyster Catcher Lane, and trying to slow people down as they come around that curve. So where we've settled on is that area just past Beach Realty there. So it's about 170 feet north of the Ocean Pines Drive entrance there. It's right before the first curve in Sanderling proper there. So I think that's going to be an effective location to really have an impact on Oyster Catcher, and then be a loud reminder of folks as they start meandering through those curves in Sanderling. Coming the other way, we're looking at a site just south of, or just north rather, of Gannett Lane on the west side. My initial hope was to put the sign soon after you entered Duck from Currituck, but the issue really is there's a lot of signage down there. We've got a lot of blinking lights, things on crosswalks down there, and I really felt that adding one more thing down there was just going to get lost and not have the effect we needed. So really looked for a straight section where it would have the most impact on drivers that approached it. So after looking at a number of sites, we settled on that one. I think it's going to be an effective place to again, slow people down in the curves as they're headed south through Sanderling. So my hope is permits in hand, we'll be able to get them up and running by the end of the month. So if we can do it sooner, we certainly will. So, next big project we're working on, will let me move, is our Lpr replacement camera. So all that equipment is in. We are slated for next week to have the installs completed, and then on Thursday of next week, we'll do the official commissioning and swap over to the new system. I really am impressed, in fact, blown away by the technology, the software technology behind the new cameras we've chosen. Not only is the technology of the cameras better, but the functionality of the software, the fact that it will be a total integration with the new software suite that we're sharing with the county. A lot more North Carolina agencies are using this particular vendor, so it means greater information sharing and greater access to data for us. So, and the real icing on the cake is this system is half the cost of what we were seeing from the other vendor. So very excited to get this online. I really think this is going to be a big improvement. The LPRs have been great for us. The technology we put in place 5 years ago was top notch at that time, and now we're gonna re-up that and take that project a lot farther. So excited about that. This is our LPR data, as I've told you in past months. You know, I'm not 100%. There are issues with it because when you try to take traffic volume numbers from license plate readers, they read a vehicle every time the license plate is scanned. So if you have vehicles in heavy traffic, you can scan a license plate 10, 20 times, and those aren't actual volume numbers. So it's been tough to settle on a percentage that we need to take out of that. It's something I really want to look at the functionality of the new software and possibly being able to remove duplicate scans from the data to get a much more accurate volume count. So I'm hoping we'll be able to do some of those things when we get that online. And last, that's Joe at the parade, one of the great shots we got out of that. Sorry I wasn't here at the last meeting, but glad the parade was a huge success. I've got a huge thank you to Missy. I wasn't able to be there, but didn't have to give it a second thought with her at the helm that day. So huge appreciation to you, Lieutenant, and I appreciate everything you do. Any questions?
Chief, how's your experience with golf carts and legalized golf carts so far going?
It's been a nightmare dealing with the golf carts this summer. But what I have to report is that they, for the most part, they're behaving. We haven't had any major accidents involving golf carts, but our outreach, I believe, is working. We got the stickers to a number of the vendors who have placed them on their golf carts. I think that's led to a reduction in the number of underage drivers, for sure, having that posted right out. And the one thing I am noticing is there are less of the non-street legal golf carts being rented out. I think most of the agencies have shifted to LSVs, which actually makes it easier for us from an enforcement standpoint. So I think hopefully for the retreat this year, we'll have some more data to bring back to you on exactly what we've experienced this summer. But all in all, there's a lot of them, but it has been working.
Going back to the license plate readers and that data corruption that you're seeing, so you think that the newer technology is going to be able to weed out and you're going to actually get counts as well?
I do think it is. You know, one of the things with the older system is it had older software. It just didn't have a lot of functionality. And while we're just getting into it, being able to use this software and going through the training on it, it seems like there's far more options there for going through the data and removing that. It may take quite a bit of work on our end to be able to do that and remove duplicates and things, but I think once we get it down, we may be able to automate some of those processes and generate more accurate reports over time. It's not that the data's bad, it's just license plate readers were never designed to be car counters.
Right.
And we're asking them to do something that traditionally they wouldn't do, but I think we've got some opportunities with this new vendor to maybe get them to do some things in the background too, and possibly add some things to their software. we have a geography like no other place has, where there's a one way in and one way out. So for us, it lends itself to LPR technology, but there's also no reason we can't use that technology for county cars because of that. So 100% of vehicles go by it.
Yeah. Thank you.
I hope to have good things to report on that in the future.
Great work.
Thank you, Chief.
All right, so most of the other department heads have given most of my presentation for me this evening, and I thank them for that. So I will get started. My first thing up is beach nourishment, which Sandy gave an update on. All of the new timeline is up on the website. We've sent a specialized e-news out about it, and it has been on our social media today as soon as I got that. So please feel free to share that information, of course, knowing that it may change at any point between now and November. But I haven't gotten a lot of feedback from people about asking about beach nourishment schedule, which hopefully means that they're reading it and they're prepared, or they just know it's not coming to Duck for a while. So I'm gonna take the no feedback as good right now.
Well, I think they see it's not going to bother their beach time.
Exactly.
While we're worried about the weather effect.
Right. Maybe Thanksgiving. It might get the Thanksgiving crowd. Betsy gave me a really great update for the summer events from just July, and I'm very impressed. So this is not counting things that were done on 4th of July on the attendance, but just in July for summer events, there have been almost 3,500 attendees at our weekly events. And I know last month I mentioned that we're trying to be a little greener. We've switched to these water stations. They're going really well. Betsy's done a really great job of setting expectations for the attendees about what to bring and to be prepared, and pointing out the water bottle filling stations. So I'm really excited about that. She's had really strong merchandise sales just in July, almost $2,500. And we only budgeted $2,000 for the whole summer is what we thought we'd get in revenue, and she's crushed that in just 1 month, so very exciting. And I wrote on there, thanks to motivate sales volunteers. We've had some volunteers who have really gotten into selling some of our merchandise. It's been really fun. And the top photo here is our magician. He is using our plush duck in a little magic trick that he does, and we've almost sold out of them. So he knows what he's doing too. He's a very motivated seller. As expected, the summer sponsorships are a little bit lower this year, with about 27% of our summer events sponsored. We're going to make some of that up on Jazz Festival, and I'll get to that soon. Or next. Duck Jazz Festival, we're still getting a last few sponsorships coming in. We are 40% sponsored. So, and that is not including the fact that PNC's contribution was paid in 2020. So removing PNC's sponsorship, we're still 40% sponsored, so that's pretty good. Also, if we remove staff time, because we do put staff time in that budget, a line item for that for in-kind for our grants. So removing that, because that's something council is paying out already for our staff time, we are at about 60% sponsorship. So we're doing pretty well. Our print ads are going out already. Digital campaigns is something new I'm trying this year. They've begun in the Hampton Roads and Richmond markets in July. And in the next couple of weeks, there'll be a second digital campaign that goes out in our kind of market areas that are not local. And our website is updated. I'm waiting to hear on our green travel certification. I think that should come soon. I'm really excited about that. And there's a little bit of information about sustainability on the Jazz website, but I'll update that more as soon as we hear on green travel. Excuse me. So this is just one of our ads that's gone out. It's really a long ad, but I had to cut it in half to get it on the page. But working with Access Design, I really love the design they came up with this year. The multicolored design is something we had come up with in 2020 because we were working on it being the 50th anniversary of Earth Day, and kind of a think globally, act locally theme. And so he had this great rainbow-colored logo, but we've held on to that for 2 whole years, and then he came up with this really great bandshell logo that I like. Yeah, I'm excited. It'll make the actual poster for signing, I think, will be really pretty. Public information updates, we still have fridge clings to go out. People are picking them up, but, feel free to mention that to anyone who might want a fridge cling. And Betsy and I have started putting together the framework for the mailed fall newsletter. And we do have a space in it. I know that council had requested that we talk about the SOAR values in there, and so we have a space reserved for that. And then Chief Ackerman already talked about golf carts and LSVs, but I might as well play one of our outreach videos. Uh-oh. Hopefully we can hear it. Hang on. You didn't have to do it. You didn't.
Please remember that a properly licensed
Children driving, and it was a terrifying experience to be driving someone else's child. Really good job of capturing everything we had talked to the police about wanting to capture in that video. And he was a very great little actor. But since it's hard to hear, I'll keep going. It's on our YouTube page and on our website, though, if you want to watch it. It was fun. And that's all I have. Does anyone have any questions? No? All right.
Are you still actively trying to get more sponsorships for any of this, or are you pretty much done?
I still have some sponsorship asks out there, and then I have a few. It's very interesting. Every year now that I've done it, right around this time when people start seeing the posters and the ads, I'll have a few people who slide in and say, is there any way I can still get in there? So, yeah.
Good, okay.
Yeah, so if they want to do that, I'll tell them, understand that some of the print advertising has gone out already, but, we won't do the posters for another couple of weeks, so people still have some time to get in there if you know anybody else who wants to.
Kristen, did you tell us a number for the 4th of July parade attendance?
I have not yet.
Not yet, okay.
Yeah, we want to look at that drone footage and try and measure. I don't know if maybe the police have a good guess on how many people were there. I'm really bad at it. I mean, there were thousands.
A lot.
No.
A lot.
A lot? Okay. Yes.
A lot plus 2.
There were technically a lot of people there.
Yeah.
But we're going to work on estimates
Okay.
using the drone footage.
It just seemed like a really nice crowd.
It really was. And so kind of that drone footage, when everyone starts coming down the street, that'll be a really good spot for us to get a still photo and measure it and get a count there. So we are working on that with our full debrief. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Kristen.
Good evening, everyone. Okay, so I'm going to bring you the financial update. Total cash on hand was $15,989. $15,989,569. If comparing last year's July cash balance, excluding the beach nourishment funds, to July 2021, there has been almost a 29% increase. So that is great. Account balances, the town ended July with approximately $1,220,492 held in the general checking account. This is just above the 10% that we typically keep of our general fund. The remaining funds were in the investment accounts and our beach nourishment bond accounts. Revenues, total collection with prior year comparison. This compares from last year, July 2021. The sales and use tax revenues received in July were for the April collections in the amount of $161,740. This was an 18% increase to last year's April collections. The property tax revenues included collections through June 30th. This brings the town to 99.99% collected. We only have a remaining tax receivable balance of $641 for fiscal year '22, so that's great. The motor vehicle tax revenues were also for the June collections in the amount of $3,397. The occupancy tax received in July were for the May collections in the amount of $184,352. This was a slight decrease compared to last May collections, but we still have one more month of collections for fiscal year '22, and we are still predicting to exceed our budgeted revenue amount. The utility franchise tax was collected in July for the quarter ending March 31st, 2022, in the amount of $93,116. This was a 3.5% increase from the same period in fiscal year 2021. We received the real estate transfer tax for the quarter ending June 30th in the amount of $211,829. We ended the fiscal year '22 with $26,336 collected over our budgeted amount for the fiscal year. The ABC profits and mixed beverage tax were received in July for the quarter ending March 31st as well, in the amount of $8,023, which was an increase from last year with the same quarter of $7,410. The town also received the second American Rescue Plan Act distribution in the amount of $63,102. We have not decided what we are going to use those funds for yet. We have roughly over $126,000 that we've received. The government lessened the requirements that we're allowed to use those funds for, so we're evaluating and we'll be coming to you with some options in the coming months. Investment earnings continue to increase for our North Carolina Capital Management Trust account. Our monthly yield went from 1.27% in June to 1.83% in July. We had a total earnings in July of $9,913. And then our PNC money market accounts have also grown from 0.01% to 0.65%. Overall, our expenses were generally within budget. Some expenditures for the year have already shown a higher percentage spent. We've already paid our workers' compensation and property liability insurance, which is generally paid earlier in the year. And then our revenues versus expenditures. As you can see from the bar graph, the revenues can fluctuate from month to month. For July, the expenses did outweigh the revenues, which is to be expected as we've mostly received revenues for fiscal year '22. We will continue to record additional revenues and expenditures in August that are applicable to last fiscal year. I will give another update in September as we get a little closer to finalizing those numbers. Does anybody have any questions?
When will we get our, will we start the audit process again? I mean, you have to wait until we get all of our 2022 numbers in, and you're expecting that by October, or when do you expect to really close out the year?
Usually work on it in September. Teresa's already actually sent me some spreadsheets to start preparing for it. Usually it's what, early September, Lori? Middle of September.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you, Jessica. Going on to item number 10, the mayor's agenda. I have a couple items tonight. First of all, I do have my mayor's chairman meeting, not yet scheduled, but it will be held in August, and we're going to be hosted by Manio. And secondly, I still remain as president of the North Carolina Local Leadership Foundation, and we've been a little bit dormant since the last couple of months. We're actually doing some rework on the foundation and kicking it off. We're bringing in a consultant to take a look at organization and basically strategic initiatives on how we're going about to kind of rework the foundation. So that's going to be interesting work. Our first meeting, in fact, with the consultants will be tomorrow. And thirdly, and I did send an email to council a couple days ago, and it said I'd like to bring a proposal forth to the council, and I'm going to pass out a sheet that I'm going to talk through here. As I said in my email, that I'd like to propose tonight to council for consideration a one-time town staff bonus. And I'm kind of going to read from this because there's some pertinent points in here. But I'd like to propose tonight to the town council one-time bonus to entire full-time staff, excluding the town manager, and who are working full-time or using their accrued sick, vacation, or compensatory leave for the last 6 consecutive months. And a question was raised, but by North Carolina statute and North Carolina State Treasurer, and confirmed by our attorney, John Leidy, we do have the authority to grant bonuses. And of course, we've done over the last several years, many years now, a merit bonus combination when we do reviews. So let me go through the background of why I'm suggesting this. We'll have a lot of time to discuss this, but the biggest driver of this request is the state of the national and local economy. We all know where that is right now and what's happening to it. Costs continue to escalate, and our employees, particularly those who are newer to our staff, not high-wage earners, are struggling to make ends meet. And when we met many months ago and determined basically the merit and bonus structure for 2022-2023, that was before the economy actually even degraded more. And I think we're now behind the 8 ball when it comes to our town. Following the town policy, our pay scale adjusted by the CPI second half calendar for 2021, which was a 6% increase. As you know, the only impacts those who are at the bottom or top of the pay grades and not most of our staff. So if you move out or move in to a classification, that would affect you. Our town manager did, during the budget process, propose a COLA increase. The council opted to maintain our merit bonus basis, but did account for the economic pressures, as I said before, with a 3% merit increase and a 3% merit bonus. And I believe at that point in time, I think the staff did appreciate the fact that we were raising that from what it was previously to 6%. But in reflecting on this decision and conversations with the town manager, this change occurs on the employee's anniversary date, so many of our town employees will not see a pay increase until later in the fiscal year. Less than half of our staff have an anniversary in the first quarter of the fiscal year, and 15 of our 40 have an anniversary in the second half of the fiscal year. So they're going to continue to see what they're making now. Some of them will into the next year. One of the issues we had in our conversations is that our neighboring municipalities with whom we compete for employees made some pretty significant changes in their compensation to account for the economic changes. Here's what we know from checking with the other towns. And I've got a chart in here that shows basically the 6 towns on the beach, COLA, merit increase, and merit bonus. And of course, you'll see that Duct, we do not do a COLA, but we do the merit increase and merit bonus. You'll see the other 5 towns did do a COLA, ranging anywhere from 5% to 7.5%. Some also did a merit increase. 2 towns don't do a merit increase, and there's only 2 towns that actually give a merit bonus. So it's a little bit of a mix on the beach. I personally think that still our merit increase and merit bonus is the best way to go and reward people per performance, but obviously it differs from town to town. In fact, 2 of the towns, they do not give reviews. So while the other towns do not have the same merit system we do, the larger COLA increases have put us behind, particularly in public safety. While we may catch up again, assuming that other towns do not continue to make these kinds of adjustments, the reality is that the current economy is impacting our staff today. The town manager has discussed this proposal with his leadership team. They all agree that a fixed amount of a bonus will do more of what we want to accomplish than to provide more help for lower wage earners. As an alternative, a percentage bonus, while helpful, provides a larger benefit to higher wage earners. So basically, if we did it on a percentage basis, it would not be equitable across the entire town staff, and we really think that, in fact, we should have an equitable payment. So the proposal would be a fixed $3,000 per employee that equates to 6.4% for our lowest wage earners and represents an amount that will really help these staff make ends meet in an economy with inflation running at about 9 to 10%. The total cost, and this is estimated, to provide each employee except the town manager and those not mentioned earlier in my conversation, and loaded with FICA, retirement, 401K, and as you must be, the total is shown below, and that total is about $146,000. The difference for police is set by statute, where their required retirement contribution rate is higher than other employees. We included Nicole in the fire department's total required retirement contribution rate is higher than for other employees. So expense would probably not require an amendment to our 2022-23 budget. It would come from the fund balance. A budget amendment may not be required in the short term, as we can monitor the expense on a monthly basis. Understanding the time of our budget process would have been difficult to project, the economy would continue to decline and require this suggested action. So what I'm asking the council tonight, and I think we can have that discussion and deliberation now, number one, are you in agreement with this proposal? Or do we want more time to review and readdress at the September council meeting? Do you have any other alternatives? If an agreement is made, what date do we want to make the payment? And do you need additional clarification from either myself or the town manager? And with that, I'd like to open up for discussion. Drew, is there anything you'd like to add to that conversation?
No, thank you, sir. I think that covers the proposal that we've discussed.
I mean, as I put forth this proposal, you know, my recommendation is sooner rather than later. I think it's equitable. I think it's needed. And I would like to see positive response and move in this direction. And I think from an expense standpoint, I don't think there's any doubt in any of our minds that this is not going to cripple the town of Duck one bit as we move forward in the budget year. And with that, I'll open up for discussion and questions.
I've got a question on the other towns. I appreciate the chart showing the other towns and their way they've handled increases. And my understanding then is if you have a COLA, for example, someone passes a COLA increase, it goes into effect immediately. And if you have a merit or merit increase or merit bonus, you have to wait for the anniversary date of the employee to affect it.
That's correct.
So by doing what we did in that budget, it was subject to each individual merit day. But if we had adopted a COLA, it would have been effective immediately with the budget. Is that how that works?
That's correct, yes.
And it would have just permeated through everyone's normal bi-monthly salary or however we're paying everybody.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so and thank you for allowing me just to continue with my question. So doing a one-time bonus, number one, it accomplishes a few things because it's not really a percentage, it's a flat fee based on everybody to kind of give a bump to those folks that are either newer or in a different, just entering a different scale. And it'll have more impact clearly on those lower salaried employees, kind of an immediate impact. And the $3,000 figure, it sounds like the mayor and the manager have talked quite a bit about it. So could you speak to where you came up with the 3 as opposed to 4 or 5, for example?
I think, I'll speak first, Drew, but we kind of discussed it. We thought that was a reasonable rate. Certainly it is a higher percentage for the lower salaried employees and a lesser percentage for the higher. At one point in time, we talked about, actually excluding some individuals from this, and we decided not to do that. To impact everybody that's going to be pinched based upon the local economy. We thought 3,000 was a reasonable number, and it's a pretty significant percentage, especially when you look at lower income employees.
So kind of just looked at the percentage of the 6.4 over the lowest of the lower of the salary ranges.
Right.
Is that what you came up with too? I mean, clearly
Right.
we're not trying to give it away, but I was just curious where that figure came to be.
Well, I think too, if you look at the number, the 3,000, it equates to 6.4 for the lowest paid. I'm just going to guess that if we did it for overall percentage, it would probably be about 4%.
Yeah, somewhere in that neighborhood, yes.
So
On average.
if you take a look at our 3% merit, our 3% increase, our 3% bonus, and then add 4% to it, we're at about 10%, which seems to be roughly consistent with, the accumulation of each of the other towns.
Yes, sir.
So, I mean, I think it's a reasonable number in terms of what our competition is doing. I would say that, you can argue both ways all day on should you do a percent or should you do a dollar amount. I mean, I guess the rationale for the dollar amount is that the type of expenses that we're trying to mitigate are the same for everybody, regardless of what their salary increase is. You know what I'm saying? It's like, we're trying to get to the gas, that little bump in the energy thing, so everybody's got the same gas and the same bump and all that, so I think it's fair to do the flat amount. I suspect that and I don't know what protocol is, but I suspect that the town manager didn't include himself in this, but I would say we should probably think about that too.
Well, the town, we're going to get the town manager's review tonight, and that's really a separate discussion.
So we can handle that in that process. Okay, great.
No, I think that Tony's analysis is quite good, and we should do something in this troubled time that we're all living in to try to make things better for our people, so I'm all for it.
Would it be something that the council might want to revisit again after, if this is implemented down the road, depending on the state of the economy? Or is this does this council feel like this would be the only time we would address this year?
I guess I would say it's situational. We know what the economy is today. I mean, who knows 6 months what the situation may be. So I would think that, we would certainly want to be, equitable and fair, and I think we'd leave it open for future conversations. That's why I kind of pushed now, because we know what it is today.
Yeah.
And
Let's all keep our fingers crossed. Yeah, I said, let's all keep our fingers crossed.
yeah, we're so.
Well, we have the $126,000 that we haven't applied to any budget thing from the government. I'll call it stimulus or whatever you want to call it. I don't know if that's the appropriate place for it, but I mean, that's certainly almost a wash right there.
Right.
That's why it's not really any,
Well, it's kind of interesting, Monica, you bring that up, because in doing some of the research out there, some of the cities and towns actually use ARP funds as bonuses for their employees during COVID.
well, I mean, it kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
And it is a high cost of living on in this resort area, even maybe feeling it a little bit more than an average community. So that's why I was asking those other questions about a higher number or another round of this at some other point. If you could remind us, Nick, in another budget, another financial review as we move forward, about that stimulus at 126.
Yes.
Just where we're talking about plugging it in, that would help me, because I don't think we budgeted for it. Or did we budget for half of it?
So we budgeted for half of it, and there's half of it is sitting in fund balance, basically, from fiscal 22. And as Ms. Barnes says, now that the government has said you can pretty much use it for anything, including supplanting current projects, we'll bring you a list of things that we can do with it, and this is going to be on it.
Yeah,
if it's approved.
That would be helpful. Yeah, I'm all in favor of this. I appreciate you guys talking about it and bringing it to us in such a comprehensive way. And would definitely be interested in revisiting another round of this, depending on how we see things going with our revenues and state of the overall economy. Because I feel like our employees are something that we greatly value, and we want to continue to show them how much we do value them.
Yeah, I think back to, even if we were to take this from the general fund, if in fact that's what the end result ends up being, we had to have a very healthy general fund, and we're well above the percentage right now. It's our target, so, you know, from a financial impact going into this year, I see a minimal impact, you know, on the town. And perhaps with the delay of many of our projects, take for instance the brick project, you know, could actually free up additional funds, so. I guess so the question is, it sounds like we have some agreement. Would you like to make the decision tonight and move forward and give direction to the town manager to make this happen?
I say yes, let's make a decision tonight and let's implement it as quickly as possible.
I concur.
I also.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind entertaining a higher number, but I don't sense a lot of consensus on that right now, so I would be in favor of this right away.
Robert, a legal question, do we need a motion in that regard, or?
It would be appropriate.
All right. I'd like to make the motion that we, in fact, authorize the town manager to pay a $3,000 bonus to the entire full-time town staff, excluding the town manager and those who've been, and then those who've been working with accrued sick, vacation, or compensatory leave for the last 6 consecutive months. And Drew, we agreed, was that 3,000 was going to be net of taxes and FICA?
No, so that's a gross amount. And then, yeah, the loaded number I gave you was the employer's contribution, and then the employees would have to pay, because it's income, they'd have to pay tax on that, and their contribution, the 6% for retirement, would also come out of that. Because it all accumulates into their salary that gets reported for retirement purposes.
And if I put a date in there, should I say the next payroll run?
Effective immediately?
Yep, so if you want to do it effective immediately, next week is the next payroll run. I'm just looking at Ms. Barnes, no problem getting that done, right? Yep, we can do it.
The motion saying effective immediately. Any discussion on the motion on the floor? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion passes 5-0. Thank you, council. I think it's the right thing to do.
Mayor and council, on behalf of your professional staff, thank you. I know the lower wage earners are just as important as those that are making higher wages, and they're under a lot of pressure. I know this will go a long way to help them. And thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments, Drew. Okay, moving on to item 11, council member agenda, starting with our Mayor Pro Tem, Monica Thibodeau.
Thank you, Mayor. I think I brought up last time, and I apologize, I don't remember if about the Outer Banks Visitors Bureau coming in October. So we've got that can happen for the Visitors Bureau. That would be Tim Cafferty, our chair, and Lee Nettles, our executive director, coming just to do a quick, a nice brief presentation that they've been doing with all the other towns. And so I look forward to seeing them, welcoming them in October. Also wanted to mention, I just happened to serve on the Roanoke Island Historical Association Board, and just got to go to the performance last night for the first time. I didn't make the opening night, and it's been a busy summer for me, and I just want to encourage everybody to go and take a look at the show, enjoy it. I found it just to be great. It's obviously an Outer Banks tradition, and so I just encourage everybody to don't forget about it. It's going to be only, through third week of August if all goes well. I was reminded last night that August 18th was the official date of Virginia Dare's birth. 18th. And so that was kind of cool, which is why they bring the real baby in on that night. I've never been there for that night, but it's kind of neat to think that we have this history right here in our own backyard. So I just want to remind everybody about it. Please go and enjoy. And they've shortened it a little bit, if that's appealing to anyone. And I hardly needed any bug spray last night. It was a beautiful night, perfect night for it. So that was a little plug I want to get in there. And I believe that is everything I wanted to talk about. So thank you.
Thank you, Monica. Councilmember Rob Mooney?
I've got nothing other than to say we did go see that show about 2 weeks ago, and it was pretty good. The sword fight was a little long, but
Well, I
I'm
pulled
used
some
to
of the
those kinds
younger
of things
kids.
ending quicker.
There were some younger kids still awake. I mean, there were, 2, 3-year-olds as you walk out, and one of the young boys said, I said, what was your favorite part? And he said the sword fight. So I guess it depends on your age, but yeah, those are almost like dances themselves because they're so choreographed. So anyway, you're right. There's a lot of sword going on, but anyway. It's 2 hours this year with the intermission, so it's not gonna, it will keep you up later maybe than you're normally used to, but anyway, I'm glad you went.
Good. Thank you, Rob. Councilmember Sandy Whitman.
I'd just like to thank Christian and Betsy for the great shows they've been bringing to us this year. The concerts, the stuff in the amphitheater, it's just been great. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandy. Councilmember Tony Shannon.
The only thing I have to report is that, I had encouraged the Government Education and Access Committee to do something on pedestrian, bike, and motor vehicle traffic safety on the bypass, because we always have, unfortunately, tragedies there every year, and they did. They put a nice video together that's on current TV, so if you get a chance to see it, they did a nice job. I hope people watch it, because, we just had a serious accident the other day there again, and it's just scary. That's all I have.
Thank you, Tony. Lori, do you need a copy of my presentation for the minutes? I'll send you one. Drew's got a copy. All right. We have no public here for any other business, so we'll delay that and go to closed session. I'm going to ask Mayor Pro Tem to read the motion.
I'd like to make a motion that we enter into closed session in accordance with sections 143-318.116 of the North Carolina General Statutes to consider the qualifications, competence, performance, character, fitness, conditions of appointment, or conditions of initial employment of an individual public officer or employee or prospective public officer or employee.
All in favor of going to closed session, please say aye.
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 We are now in closed session. We will leave the room. We will give the big room to you.
I'm going to get like to state these goals.
The council is now out of closed session. We'd like to report that the town manager will be receiving, effective 8/1/22, a 7.5% salary increase and a one-time bonus of $10,000. And Lori, I'll confirm that with you in writing tomorrow.
You need a motion to approve that, please. You can make a motion to approve that, please.
You want to make the motion, Mayor? Okay.
I'd like to make a motion that effective 8/1/2022, that town manager's new salary will be increased by 7.5% and a one-time bonus of $10,000. Is there any discussion on the motion on the floor? There being none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Is there any other business to come before the council this evening? There being none?
Oh, hold on.
Hold on, Robert's got.
Could I
his
ask
pen
you
up.
a question, Mayor?
Is there any other business to come before the council this evening?
None.
There being none, I'll remind council the next scheduled meeting will be the regular meeting on Wednesday, September 7th, 2022 at 6 p.m. And I'll entertain a motion for adjournment. All in favor, please say aye.
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 The meeting is adjourned.